Well, good afternoon. Lyndall, Fraker here again with Marshfield Old School Times. It's been a couple of weeks since we've been here. We were on a little trip or two and for my birthday and our anniversary, but we're back today with a very special guest. We're very honored to have Charlotte Cole with us today. Charlotte, welcome. In case you're wondering who Charlotte is, she happens to be the daughter of our sheriff, Webster County Sheriff Roye Cole.
Thank you.
Roye, thanks for coming in.
Yes, thank you.
Appreciate
very
it.
much for having us. Appreciate
We've been anxious to get Roye on the show, and he's usually busy chasing criminals or kids or something. And today he had a few minutes, so we were really glad that Roye accepted my invitation. And we're going to talk a little bit about Roye's life, his career, what he's been up to. Everybody knows that Roye is a very popular sheriff here in Southwest Missouri. Certainly, he's our Webster County Sheriff, and we're proud of him. But he's also doing a lot of work statewide, and kind of got involved in the legislative part of law enforcement for our state to make it better, to help keep criminals behind bars. And we're going to hear a little bit more about that. So here we are, August the 17th. It's hard to believe that the summer is about over. School's going to be starting this week. And so it's very appropriate to have Sheriff Cole on as we think about safety and we think about the kids out there. There's been some tremendous tragedies occur recently in our community, and our heart and our prayers go out to those families. And please keep them in your prayers. They're going to need it for a while. But with that, Roye, we're going to get started. As one of my good friends, Gary Price, had on the show, always says, "When did you come to America, Roye?"
I think I was born here, but I was pretty little when it
That's
happened.
kind of what he means.
Yeah, I was little.
Yeah.
I don't remember much about that.
So talk a little bit about your childhood and your parents and your siblings and so forth.
Yeah, so mom and dad, they moved to Rogersville when I think it was 1984. So dad took an assistant minister's job there at the Rogersville Church of Christ, and that's where I was raised. Lived on the little road called David Lane. It's right there by the park in Rogersville. And I still drive the kids by there once in a while. Just I like the history stuff. I always got to drive people around. It's always like a tour. I got to point out. And
Yep.
once you've done this long enough, I mean, every road in the county has a story. You can't drive by a place without a story that's pretty interesting to people. And so that's what I do. And had a very good childhood. Had good parents. And back in, oh gee whiz, I don't know what year it was. I was 16. Became a police cadet. Chief Powdert, who finally retired as the Seymour police chief, but he was at West Memphis, and he's kind of a legend in the business. He let us start a police cadet program. So I was just a 16-year-old kid driving around on a bicycle with a radio and handcuffs, and had no idea what I was doing, but it was just always been in the business. It's all I know.
This was in Rogersville.
This was in Rogersville, yeah. So I mean, our biggest thing was we'd ride bicycles in the parade, but we got to ride around with the officers and got to see a couple of really tense moments, and it's things that stick with you at a young age, because when you're in something pretty intense at 16, you remember it. And so you just did that till got to high school, and then high school, man, and I got married right out of high school, and then built furniture there for a little while for Dennis Ragsdale, who I don't get to talk to very often, but I ironically talked to him this morning because Charlotte and I were remodeling Jack's room, his bathroom, and did that for a year, but didn't have any money to go through school, and knew that was important. And half my family was in education, and I was a terrible student. I just wasn't interested.
Yeah.
I was smart enough, but just wasn't interested, and didn't focus as well as I should have. But I knew that was important, and I would encourage, especially if you don't know what you want to do in a career, you need to pursue your education until you do know what you want to do, and then you need to focus on that. But went to OTC for a couple of years, and then took a job at jury because I was smart enough to know somebody had kind of let me in that if I worked there and then started school, they'd pay for your school for free. So mine and my wife at the time, our educations were both paid for. Mine was in psychology and criminology, and then she got hers in communication, and then I went back later and finished my master's degree in business, because when you get to the point where you're dealing with multi-million-dollar budgets and markets and things like that, do you understand when you're the sheriff?
Sure.
I figured the master's in business was probably more important, and it's really served me well. But parallel to going to school,
Now you graduated from high school what year?
Rogersville in '99.
99.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
so we're into the 2000s here.
Yep.
Is the time frame.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
yeah.
Yep. And then parallel to that, while I'm doing the education thing, wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. It was either the the preacher, teacher, and coach, or police, but didn't know what it was. Went to the academy and then started volunteering at Greene County as a reserve. Did that on Friday nights, and then after I graduated, Caleb came along, and I ended up working as a deputy juvenile officer here in Marshfield, and that's where things really changed for me in a lot of ways, because most of my time had been spent in Springfield, and it's just a much bigger, busier, you're just a number kind of place, and driving to work here was very, very different. There were no more stoplights, there were no more traffic jams, there was no more standing in line. And one of the funniest things is the year I came to town was the sesquicentennial. I can't say
2005 sesquicentennial.
Every man in this courthouse had a beard,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't know why they all had beards, and it weirded me out because I moved to Marshfield, and the only time I'd ever been here was to play sports, and sometimes that went well for us, and sometimes it didn't go well for us. But everybody had huge beards, and I was like, "Where can I come to?" And they were wearing. David Young was wearing overalls all the time, and I didn't know who he was. And but I'm working on the first floor of the courthouse, I just can't figure this out. And then one day in the middle of, I didn't know anything about the parade. I didn't know any of these things. And one day I show up and they're all shaved, and I was like, "What's going to find me?" I think Paul or somebody told me what was going on, and I was like, "Oh goodness!" But I really did fall in love with the county and the people, and they just always treated me really good, and I loved helping them, and took that real serious. And then in 2008, signed up to run and served ever since.
Absolutely. You were a young man too.
Yeah, I was
from 99 till the 08, in 9 years, you had accomplished all those things. Got your education,
yeah,
juvenile officer, cadet, and then you ran for sheriff, and you've done that ever since. So pretty remarkable. Maybe the youngest sheriff in the county, possibly.
No, I looked that up. Shoot, I think there was an 18 or 19-year-old sheriff way back in the day, and in fact,
currently you
current
yeah.
sheriff, yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
And I joke because I've been the youngest sheriff in the state twice. So I got elected, I was the youngest. And then 4 years later, another guy got elected, and he was just a little bit younger than me, from one of the northern counties. And then he ended up getting arrested and kicked out of office.
Oh my goodness.
So then I was the youngest again. So I was like, I've been the youngest twice. And I tell you what, we just got back from sheriff's conference, and those are the things, you don't really want to be gone for a week, but you pick up so much. And
they're a good refresher.
Oh,
you
not
refresh
just
your
that,
career.
but
Your career. I mean, refreshing your career, not necessarily your personal life, but your career.
Just the being able to makes you kind of feel like you can make a difference, and you can meet the right folks and build the right relationships to try to get things done. As you know, things happen real slow up there sometimes.
Oh yeah.
And they don't go in a way that you would logically think they should go. But I mean, I have to say this. I mean, one of our speakers this year was the interpreter they call Johnny Walker. I don't know if you're familiar with the story or not, but he was the Iraqi interpreter that they had to go back and get. He was the one that the SEALs were like, "We're sneaking him back into the country, even if we get court-martialed," because he was so trusted. And he talked for a couple hours one night, and I mean, it just brings tears to your eyes, makes you want to stand up and feel patriotic that this Iraqi citizen. He wanted to convert Iraq to
he was a citizen. Yeah.
And now he's an American citizen.
Yeah.
So I could sit around and visit with him. Now I've got his phone number.
That's cool.
And
That's really
Charlie got to meet with him, and it just a lot of good stuff happens up there. You really can try to.
Well, Charlotte, I'm going to ask you a question. So, what's it like being the daughter of the sheriff of Webster County?
She has no filter, and she'll tell you.
Well, that's okay. I want to know.
It's a family show. So
I mean, it's kind of it's probably sometimes kind of a tough thing, but on most times, I'm sure you're very proud of it.
Yeah, like it's really cool because I'm different from everybody else, and like I know all of these stories that nobody else even thinks of.
Yeah.
And it's interesting.
I bet it is. And so you have two brothers. Tell us about your brothers.
Well, both pretty annoying.
Well, that's should be expected though, right?
Yeah.
One's Caleb.
Yeah, one's Caleb and the other one's Jack.
Uh-huh.
Caleb moved out a while ago, and
He graduated.
yeah, he graduated
Going to
in
OTC.
2023, and then Jack's a junior
Uh-huh.
in high school, and I don't know, but
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Caleb was a good football player.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
But he couldn't play his freshman year because he dislocated his shoulder and had to have surgery.
Mm-hmm.
But
he was the
yeah.
quarterback, right? Or running back?
He was till he got injured.
Till he got injured.
Yeah, he hurt his shoulder in 8th grade. And
Okay.
after that, what was the most beautiful form you ever saw as a pitcher and quarterback turned into?
Gotcha.
So he
Gotcha.
became running back, linebacker.
Yeah, but still was
First baseman.
outstanding. Still was outstanding.
What you strong as a horse.
What did you play in football?
I was defensive end and then tight end,
Uh-huh.
and then I also, and we were terrible. I mean, we really were terrible. But you learned so many lessons in team sports.
Oh yeah.
I kid you not, I did a survey in the jail, and I picked up a lot of things from it. Almost nobody in the jail played team sports. You know, even when I look for employees, you know, it's not a must, but team sports is something that I really look for in our employees.
Mm-hmm.
But you learn so many lessons, and I was talking to somebody today. You know, just the mottos and the lessons that those coaches are teaching you. It's so much bigger than just the sport,
Mm-hmm.
and especially a sport like football, where you have to lay your body on the line for somebody else.
Yeah.
You learn lessons in that.
Yeah.
And those things stick with you. And Jack had a scrimmage this morning, but I played defensive end and I played tight end. My senior year, we always joke, I had a perfect record. We were 0-10.
How was Marshfield?
But I was decent and went and played a little semi-pro ball after that.
You did.
Marshfield was our first game, and every year that Rogersville plays Marshfield, Stacy Atkinson has me help with the radio program,
Sure.
and I always rehash the days of the Jeff Stone and the Eric Lowe's and the Nathan Dunns and all those guys.
So you were against that's pretty good teams.
They just destroyed me.
Yeah.
And so I was probably one of the stronger, better players on our team. And the first play of the game, they drove it right down my throat. And it was the first game of the year, first play of the year, and they just ran over me like I was nothing. And I was like, this is going to be a long season.
Yeah. But even then, I mean, that's been 20 years, you might say.
Oh, yeah.
And but Rogersville's came a long way. I mean, even from them, we think about Rogersville being, first class in everything they do when it comes to their schools, and they are today. But 20 years ago, they maybe weren't quite there yet.
Well,
I mean, I know they had a great school, but you know what I'm saying, as far as sports and all, maybe weren't as domineering as they have been.
Yeah, your sports, they go up and down.
Up and
whether
down.
You're, our baseball program is pretty solid for a long time, and our football program is, I love it. We don't always have the wins that we'd like to have, but I mean, we have a good coach, and we have good principles that those boys are teaching. And listen, I've been a part of winning programs. When I played semi-pro ball, we were undefeated. When I played high school, we didn't win a game.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
I've seen the messages that were taught in between, and that's what I'm about.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't trade those high school football days or whatever. I mean,
it really helped develop you to be.
Well, it does. Those principles stick with you.
Yeah.
I mean, they stick with you.
Absolutely.
And I think, I always joke about this. I wouldn't quote Hillary Clinton often, but she did make that comment about it takes a village. Old African proverb, but it's true.
It is true.
And those coaches and those
community
teachers,
or village or whatever you want to call
those coaches and those teachers are your parents while you're at school, and what their philosophies and what they teach matters.
Absolutely. I have often referred to, not necessarily on this show, maybe on this show, but just in life, conversations about growing up in Marshfield and how in the third grade, 8 years old, third grader, we would ride our bikes from the Fraker edition over behind McDonald's over there to the square, on a Saturday afternoon or after school, and didn't think a thing about it. My folks didn't, no cell phones, just when you get to the square, call us from the station. Gene Fraker and Noel Thomas had the service station up there, and they didn't worry about us because they knew that every house nearly on the route, which was Washington Street or Jackson Street, they knew them. They knew each other. They knew me. They knew the kids. They knew the family. Everybody knew everybody. So it was a community. It was a village. And they knew if we had any trouble or anything like that, that just go to the door, knock on the door, and ask to use the phone.
And it's only one of the negative sides of growth. This county is a very fast-growing county. I think Rogersville's fastest-growing city in the state, and that's good in so many ways. It's harder though when you don't know your neighbor,
That's right.
and you always kind of fear what you don't know.
That's right.
So you got a little fear of them, they got a little fear of you, and then eventually you meet on the side of the road and you visit somewhere and talk, and you're like, oh, they're all right. You
Yeah,
know?
that's right.
And so it's
We've not quite experienced what Nixon Ozark has yet, but it's probably coming. And I kind of worry about that, and it may be after my time, so that's fine. But um, like you said, slow, steady growth is great, but grow too fast, too big, too fast, maybe not always so good. So in 2008, you're running for sheriff. I'm running for county commissioner. We get acquainted,
right.
and pretty good times though in those days. We had it was quite a summer. You know, you had a primary. I had certainly a primary, but we came out on top, and then went on and won the general election, and so we have a little bit of a common bond in the fact that we kind of entered politics at the same time, and remained good friends, and probably leaned on each
Then you
other
up
through
and
the.
left me.
Yeah, I know, I've heard that before.
Yeah.
But you know what? We it was very helpful to me in my career in Jeff City, whether it was as a representative or as the director of the medical marijuana program when we started that, to have a friend like you, because I leaned on you. I could go to you with questions or with issues, and again, that relationship that we developed in that period of time was extremely helpful.
Yeah.
And hopefully, same way for you. We
Oh,
had if you had legislative questions, you'd pick up the phone call, and we could at least try to understand what was going on. And man, it's so important.
yeah, I can't tell you how many times you talked me off the cliff trying to understand this issue or that issue, or try to get through one thing or another. And I really appreciate how you made some introductions for me in Jeff City, because I feel like we have been able to affect a few good changes, and there's a lot of work up there that happens, and it's hard from the outside looking in because you don't understand it, and things don't get done the way they should, and then when you kind of understand how and why, it makes you feel a little better. And I appreciate, you put me in a place where I could understand at least the why this was done, why that was done, because I don't think I've ever seen a perfect bill go through ever.
No.
And you get so mad, you get so upset because you're just like, how could,
Right.
And then you understand, you're like, well, okay, I don't like it, but I understand it.
That's right.
And there's so much of that. What do they say about the law and sausage?
Yeah,
if you
sausage
love them,
making,
you don't
yeah.
want to see how they're made.
That's right. That's right. And I think that one of the things that we kind of came through together, and people don't really realize today, because the money has been so plentiful since even before COVID, when the economy started taking off. Sorry to say this, or happy to say this, but about the time Donald Trump got elected, 2016, we started to see the economy take off. After we got through the Great Recession,
Right.
It ended around 2013, 2014, and then things started going the other way.
Sure.
And until COVID, and then of course COVID, we all know what happened. But even with COVID, there was a lot of federal money that came into the state that helped the state to balance the budget. But what I was going to say was, back in those early years, we were dealing with the Great Recession. We came in, we got sworn in on January of 2009. The recession occurred in the fall of 2008, and the stock market had went from 20,000 down to 6,000 or something like that. And so there wasn't any money in the county.
And they're wanting us to build a jail.
Yeah, they wanted us to build a jail.
That was my first question.
Yeah.
Like, when are you going to build this jail?
Right.
Like, I'm going to learn how to run one.
That's right. Well,
and then we go off to jail college, learn how to
Yeah.
build one, and come back, and there's no appetite for it.
That's right.
So it just took so long.
because of the recession.
Yeah.
But
And
I know you needed radios.
Well,
First of all, you had
we had to, because we
Yeah.
had to go to narrowband.
2 or 3
You
old,
remember that?
yeah,
And
2
there
or
was
3
the
old patrol
P25,
cars.
P25 project that never came to fruition, but we all were convinced it had.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't tell us otherwise. But
It was hard to find money just for that.
it was tight.
And you had a couple old patrol cars, old used highway patrol cars that you had picked up, and
Right.
basically just trying to keep the baling wire and the
Well, I mean,
and
we
the,
were
and the
running
barbed wire.
250,000 miles on a car,
Yeah.
sometimes
Yeah, it's
3.
ridiculous.
It was
But those were
scary.
tough times. But
But
you
we weathered those.
still were able to grow the department even through that, and
Very.
work what you could do with what you had, and it was very commendable.
Well, thank you. The one thing I remember saying when I first got elected, and that was 16 years ago now. So lot, lots of things that I've been able to, or lots of things that I've forgotten.
Yeah.
But I remember saying I wasn't going to try to do anything magical. I was just going to try to take small, positive steps every day in the right direction. I think we've done that, and we've seen a lot of different challenges. I mean, this ride's a roller coaster.
It is.
It's a real blessing, but it's also a roller coaster. Just the joys of you know, um, being able to
Catch a bad guy or something.
well, no, that's what I love helping.
Yeah.
I love like it is what I want. I want to help solve the problem.
Yeah.
I can't fix them all, but I
Yeah.
still very much
Mhm.
want you to call me and I want to help.
Mhm.
I want to help fix it, and that's just a passion that I have. And I don't know if it's I don't know where it comes from,
Yeah.
but it's just I want to help. If I can be there, I can help. And I've gotten over time you get kind of good at it. But we've had a lot of highs and lows over there. We get to build this justice system, justice center, but here we are though. We're Republicans raising taxes after the Tea Party movement.
That's right.
That's a beautiful, you gotta love being the Republican that's like, hey, I hate taxes.
Yeah.
Let's raise some, and then you have to explain, look, we're not talking about national taxes, we're talking about local taxes. You can see every penny where it goes. And the big key, I think, was just open the doors on the 4th of July and say, look, y'all come look at this jail. This is your jail. You come get it. And I
Built in
remember
1939.
going to China and
Yeah.
seeing their jails because was working on my master's program, studied abroad, and one of the kids gets locked up, and I'm like, well, you're the sheriff, go get him. And I'm like, well, I ain't telling them I'm sheriff,
Yeah.
but I got to go get this kid out of jail. I see their jail, and I'm like, man, it's more clean and humane than ours.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the communist. And I never told the rest of the story, which is, of course, Beijing is their centralized pretty town that they want everybody to see. And it was right after the Olympics. And so we saw the bird's nest and went to their architecture firm and all that. But outside Beijing, they don't even have jail. They tie you to a tree or in home detention or something like that. But it was still something that our bars are from the 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like we take such pride in humanity and trying to be humane. And we've got 80 people crammed in this little bitty area.
Yeah.
It's absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, it is.
But when the citizens saw what it was, they were like, "No, we're not doing that."
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, "We're gonna do better."
Yeah.
And that's been a really good program. So.
Well, you've got a beautiful facility, and the citizens supported it.
It's their facility.
Yeah, it is. That's what I said. They supported it, and it was. You did it right. You made it fit the downtown area. It all flows well. It appears as though to me it does. Your portico and the way you've designed it to expand down the road if needed. Everything was done right.
Tried to build for growth.
Yeah, and obviously under your
and the commission,
your leadership and the commissioners, absolutely.
And the unsung heroes always stand Whitehurst.
Mm-hmm.
He has such a good eye for all that stuff. I can't even. I mean, I've spent 2 weeks trying to decide what color to paint Jack's bathroom. I can't do colors. I can't do.
Well,
I don't
you
have
just
that
ask
kind of
Charlotte. She'll tell you.
He wanted to do
She'd be
blue
like,
and green. I'm not going to do
Blue
pink.
or
I
green.
want white.
Whatever. But he really.
Yeah.
He really.
Yeah.
paid
Yeah.
a lot of
He's
attention to those
he's
details, and they were so nice. And there's a lot of history. The benches out front came from the
Mhm.
Robertson building, and the Robertsons, because we wanted to.
Yep.
To recognize that history. And
did a great job with it. And I was really
we
proud.
went to every jail around and stole ideas from them. I don't think there's too many original ideas over there. We just stole good ideas from somebody else. But I'll tell you now that every time a sheriff builds a jail, this is the first
They
place
kinda
they
look.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Greene County, Arnott sent all of his people down.
Yeah.
We're looking into Gase and, Wright County, we had the indirect supervision model and kind of got it down to an art. And what people don't understand is the building may cost $19 million, whatever it costs. Operational costs are in perpetuity. Operational costs will never stop.
Right.
Your costs are always going to be operational costs. So we try to build it in the most efficient way possible. We were able to do it with just 3 people on staff at a time overnight, which is unheard of for 160 people. One person goes to the hospital, you're down to 2 people, and so you've got to be able to be real efficient with it.
But you were spending a lot of money housing prisoners outside too.
We were.
So it's kind of a penny wise pound foolish thing.
Oh, yeah.
You were able to, you made an investment, but it's like a home mortgage. If you want to have a nice place to live, you're going to have a mortgage. But then it's better than throwing it away in rent.
Yep.
So the other thing that I kind of thought
Talk
about
those issues forever, but then
Oh,
people
yeah.
get bored.
Yeah. The other thing that I thought I would mention is the fact that, when I was in Jeff City, as I mentioned, and when I took on that role as the director of medical marijuana, obviously the first group of people that I wanted to pull in and lean on, because who would know more about the ill effects of a federally illegal product that has just been approved by the Missouri voters to become legal
Missouri
in our state,
Constitution.
in the Constitution, by the voters, in the Constitution, in the amended Constitution. So it wasn't like
No
we had,
complicated
yeah,
legal matters.
yeah,
there.
it wasn't like we had, okay, a choice as how we do things. It's spelled out in the Constitution. If you believe in the Constitution, as most of us do, you can't waver from that. You have to stay right with what the black and white print says. So
I'll give you a small little input on that.
yeah,
When I swear in and county officers swear in, my deputies swear in, we don't swear to uphold the law. We swear to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Missouri. And there's
Right.
a reason for that. And boy, it gets difficult when your state constitution and your federal constitution don't always seem to add up.
Right. Right. And we get into the states' rights versus federal rights and all
Right.
those kinds of things too. But
Amendment stuff.
yeah. But anyway, the thing about it is when I made that phone call to you, and then we made the phone call to Sheriff Arna and Sheriff Brad Cole and Sheriff Rader down at Stone County, a Webster County native, and Sheriff from Lewis County, my buddy up there,
David Parrish.
David. I mean, you guys, and you all took time and come to Jeff City, and we sat down and we talked about the ramifications of this new amendment and how do we put this program together, and the input that we got from you all. And believe me, probably out of 114 counties, there was probably 100 sheriffs that weren't too excited about this new amendment.
Right.
You know, but you all knew and had sworn that oath to the Constitution and knew that we had to do it. And if we're going to have to do it, let's do it to the very best of our ability to try to keep it well regulated, confined to where we can handle it, you know, with this force that we have and that kind of thing. And so I can't tell you how important that was to my position at that point in time, having you guys, and I called them sort of a little advisory committee, having you all to be able to lean on and to seek that input. It was so important. Colonel Replogle was a great resource.
And there was a trooper on there. I can't remember who it was.
Yep.
You had him.
Yeah, we had some good people that were, you know, it was more important for me to make sure that law enforcement bought into what we were trying to do and we were doing this right. The governor was an old sheriff, and that's what he wanted, you know, and so it was just important.
Yeah.
And I'll always appreciate you and the team for that.
Well, thank
Absolutely.
You. Thank you.
So I happen to have something here, a piece of memorabilia that in my archives, and this is a Missouri Sheriff's Guide. It was issued back in 1976. Sheriff says that it might have been the very first year that they did these. And it's got a picture of my uncle, Sheriff Eugene Fraker, on here. Sheriff Fraker served 20 years. Kind of a legend. By the way, I'm presenting this to Roye today for his, to put in his memorabilia.
It's not
Honored
fair
to
to try to live up to that.
Honored to give that to you, that piece of memorabilia.
Yeah, I love this so much. And
Tell us a little bit about the history of the Webster County Sheriff's Department, not just Sheriff Fraker, but you know, you've got some other legends that you followed, and why don't you share just a little bit about your thoughts and maybe some stories that you'd like to share about our Sheriff's Department, good or bad.
Oh, mercy. Well, there's
Jail stories.
you have to narrow it down. It is, you know, probably the biggest thing is, of course, we always reference it as an office. You know, it's not a department. That's always my biggest talking point when I hear people say Sheriff's Department, because that's what we always call it. You know, when I was at Greene County, there was kind of this thing like, oh, we're Sheriff's Office. No, we're Department. And none of us knew why or what or anything else, but we said Department because Department sounded cooler and it sounded tougher. That's all we knew.
Yeah.
And then,
well, didn't they used to use like WCSD?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought.
So, well, you don't realize a department is a division under an office.
Mm-hmm.
Well, an office is a standalone elected position,
right?
And so there's a big constitutional difference between a department and an office, and so that's always the first.
Just like Secretary of State's office.
Yeah,
it's not the Secretary of State's department.
Right.
It's the office, and then there might be departments under that.
So you know, our sheriff's office. So maybe I'll just kind of start where we're at now, or maybe where we were in 08 and then move forward from there. But you know, the county itself, I think had 28,000 people in it. And in some areas, it's hard to grow. I think we had 10 patrolmen then when I got elected. Now I think there's like 42,000 people in the county.
Yep, it's over 40.
There's probably 28,000 people outside the city, so I can't keep up.
Right.
You know, but it's still 10 patrolmen.
Yeah.
But you know, we're running SROs, and you know, we have more. We have an extra investigator and a half now.
You still have just 10
probably
patrol?
have double the amount of jailers. Yeah, still 10 patrolmen.
Still 10 patrol.
590 square miles.
Wow.
590 square miles.
Yeah.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with 10 of those boys in uniform.
Yeah.
You know, answering those calls, and so it runs you thin. And probably one of the things I take as much pride in as anything is I think my cell phone gets called as much as 911. Now that's a joke and exaggeration, but it's, you know, it's something I do take pride in. Is, you know, in a county like this, you've been around for a while.
Always available.
You have my cell phone, you know, and I'm going to help you one way or another as best I can. But it, you know, what stories you want to know? I mean, there was, you know, people like hearing about, you know, the boy swinging off the Christmas lights, trying to escape and broke his back. And yeah,
You told me about this.
yes,
Off the courthouse Christmas lights.
yeah,
Oh,
he
jeez.
tried to escape back in November of '08. I thought they were pulling a joke on me. They run in and said, so and so got out. I'm like, oh, sure he did. You know, like Sheriff Worsham had just let me take over a couple months early. And I'm up there trying to understand the budget at the time, 6 or 7 at night. And they run in and say, oh, so and so escaped. And I was literally in the process of griping about the fence that was on the outside and how they had this gaucho wire.
Yeah, you weren't even elected.
I wasn't even elected
remember
yet.
that.
And I was
now.
like,
I
there
wasn't
was
either.
like gaucho wire that we talk about.
Yeah.
The commissioner, you and I both know, was like, oh, that's good. You know, you're not going to get through that. And I'm like, that can't keep a cow out of garden. It's not going to keep a desperate man in a jail.
Yeah, because we put the radio.
It was that
on.
week. I had just written that letter down there saying, you got to fix this. And I kid you not, he jumps over, climbs over. Back then they used to feed medicine different, you know, and distribute medicine different. So he climbs over the roof and goes, and I guess he's going to rappel off the courthouse with Christmas lights. I don't know. Comes unplugged, naturally falls and takes off running. Ken Clardy finds him the next day on D Highway. You know, I mean, I spent all night wearing the same clothes. Me and Aaron Calloway were just drenched in snow and sweat, and been up all night, just committed to finding this cat. We're whooped. You're Ken Clardy over the radio. I got a boy walking down D Highway. I'm going to check him out. Sure. Turns himself in. He hid over at Carlson's on one of the cars. And we had the dogs went right up to Carlson's, but they never could find him in the car.
Yeah.
I mean, there's hundreds, thousands of stories. You know, just they're funny. Some of them are hilarious. Some of them are terribly tragic. It's the extremes.
Yeah.
We deal with all the extremes, and you never know when. And people ask me so often. I talked about this at Lincoln Days, but the hardest part of this job is not just, you know, working with the child molesters or having to put that hat on where you interview them or doing with the drugs or the murderers or the budgets or the public speeches and all this stuff. It's the switching gears continuously.
Yeah.
That will absolutely, that
always
is
something
very
different.
hard. Well, you just try to go to a physical altercation and go crunch numbers or
Yeah.
give a presentation in front of the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
That's a hard gear switch.
Yeah.
And then, you know, go home and try to turn all that off. And boy, it's hard. I
Hard
mean,
on your-
that's what'll get
hard
you.
on
It's
your
the
mind, your
switching
mental
gears back
capacity.
and forth.
Yeah.
You know, when people talk about it from the outside, they're like, oh, you know, so dangerous, so dangerous. And you're like, oh, yeah, it's dangerous.
Parts of it.
We're trained to fight. Let's fight. You know, whatever. But if that's all it was, and all you had to do is worry about the danger, that wouldn't be as mentally hard on you. But then you got to deal with the switching gears. I mean, from the peer pressures that you feel in this business to the just all of the extremes, and you got to be able to weather them and just flip those hats real quick, like everything's just fine. And it's hard because I'm not very good at that. My emotions are very clear. Whatever mood I'm in, you see it on my face, and that is what it is. And I think that's kind of a survival technique for me because I'm not very good at playing the game of pretending I'm happy when I'm not happy,
Yeah.
you know. But that's by far, I think, the hardest thing for me and my staff is just the switching gears.
How much would you say drugs play? How big of a role do drugs play in the problems that you have to deal with? Not in the office, not in the jail, but out there when you get those calls that, you know, there's a shooting going on or there's somebody doing something stupid. I mean, aren't drug related cases a huge percentage of all the things you deal with, drugs involved?
Certainly, I couldn't give you a number.
Yeah, just
I couldn't
curious.
give you a number, but I would say it'd be a very high percentage. Drugs always seem to be tied to other crimes,
Yeah.
you know, whether it's a cause and effect issue or whatever, you know, I can't, that's
Yeah.
case by case basis, but they're so often tied together, especially the, you know, the thefts and a lot of the, you know, a lot of the violence is tied to it as well. So it's a pretty high number. I couldn't give you a number,
But you know, back in the day
It's high
when
percentage.
when Gene Fraker was sheriff from 68 to 88, you know, it seems like the numbers were fairly limited on how many times people took a shot at him or his deputies, or of course he only had one or two deputies some of those early years.
Right.
And the frequency of a violent situation occurring or starting to occur was pretty minimal. I mean, it was. I mean, you know, there were situations, some bad situations, but it wasn't like what you guys deal with almost on a daily or weekly basis, right? And
Right.
and would you not say that the prevalence of drugs in our society has been a super big contributing factor to that?
Oh, I would think so.
Yeah.
There's a lot of factors. Every, you know, it starts at the home, and then it, you know, turns into the drugs, and turns into, you know, there's economy issues. There's a lot of things at play, but drugs are a pretty serious one. And there's so many different arguments on drugs. And you know, my libertarian friends, they're like, hey, we're gonna legalize this, and you know, they make a valid point in the sense that, you know, it's a free country, and then, but my issue with that was always like, if you get yourself in a, you know, a guy can do whatever he wants on his own property. My my natural instinct is to agree with that.
Mhm.
But then you get into the issue of when you get into a condition where you don't know what your property starts and stops, that could be a problem. Or
Right.
you have responsibilities within that home that you're no longer taking care of that becomes everybody else's business. And then just the absolute, I mean, I'd love to have somebody from the hospital in here to tell me how much we as taxpayers are having to pay to take care of people for these drug issues, that those bills are never being paid and they're raising the rates for everybody
Yep.
else. And I think the consequences are far more than we can ever measure.
Right.
I mean, it's extremely high, and I don't even pretend to be an expert, but I'm smart enough to know those consequences, they run deep and they're beyond what we can measure. And that, of course, that always ties back into some of the things we say. If you want to change human behavior, you know, criminology 101, I think it was swift, certain, and consistent is what punishments need to be. And our system right now is, while we have extremely good people in the system, especially on a local level, swift, certain, and consistent is pretty much the opposite of what we do, because there's, you know, there's outside factors at play. The state statutes now, when it comes to somebody going to prison, are written so loosely, you have no earthly idea how long somebody's going to be in there. And you know, back in the day, we didn't have a jail big enough that we could hold these people. You know, so it was like probation, 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 prison. Well, by the time they're on their 10th probation, they've lost their jobs, they've lost their family, they've lost their motivation, they've lost their will to do what's right, because we couldn't get in there earlier in their lives and make a difference. And we're in a place now where I feel like our judges, our prosecutors take the smaller crimes. One of the things I like to say is, if you, in a free society, it's very difficult to prevent crime because you're free. We're going to try to justify the crime afterward, but the best way you can prevent, you know, crime in a free society is by punishing the last one. You know, that is a deterrent. And it takes so long to go through the system now that there's not much of a deterrent, and there's multiple criminal behaviors happening before they ever get there. You know, that's a big topic now with their,
Sure.
you
Well,
know,
that's a good
pretrial
seg-
services.
It's a
and
good
all those
segue
things.
for our last 15 minutes. Believe it or not, we've already 3/4 of the way through. It goes by fast.
Charlotte wasn't even ran when it was made.
Yeah.
I thought it'd be here.
But that's a good segue, because I want to spend the last bit of this talking about truth in sentencing and the things that you're doing to try to help our state when it comes to not just putting people or criminals in prison, but keeping them in prison, or
Well,
making sure
Kind
that
of.
yeah.
But before you go,
Yeah.
my argument and the thing that I've tried to push is truth in sentencing. This is not about how long somebody's going to go to prison. That conversation's coming farther down the road. We're at a place right now where we don't know. We do not know how long. There's not an attorney in the state of Missouri that can read the statutes and say, well, Bob Smith's going to serve this much time. I believe that the day of sentencing, the victims, the defendant, everybody has a right to know how long they will stay in there. Now, at least the minimum amount. Now, whether they do the programs, the treatment programs, and good behavior, and they get out early, well, that's fine. But we all have a right to know the minimum amount they're going to be in there.
And so,
Right
just
now-
just to clarify, because I'm not an expert, if someone gets a 5-year sentence for some felony, whatever,
That's not
And-
even close to enough information to have any earthly idea how long he'll serve.
Right.
And
But
it should be.
right. But what I'm saying is, what you're telling me is you don't know, and even if you knew the whole story and you did the
Right.
arrest, you still don't know if he'll end up serving, even after the judge gives him the sentence or the jury. You don't know if he'll be in there a month, a year, 3 years, or 5 years. You don't
No,
know.
you don't.
There's
and you
no way
think,
of knowing.
You think you do because you read the statute
Yeah.
right up top. It's got these minimum sentences, and you're like, okay, they'll serve this percentage.
But there's little caveats.
And they have all these little disclaimers at the
Yeah.
bottom, basically saying DOC can waive all this.
Yeah.
And you think, well, this is a mandatory 30%. He's going to say, well, it's not.
Yeah.
In the plain language, it says it is, but then a couple of subparagraphs down takes it all away.
And DOC, they're looking at ways to get people out because they
Right.
don't have the space, they don't have the money, they don't have the personnel, they don't.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what. Well,
that's part of the problem, right?
Well, that's part of my frustration is, in 2017 we did justice reinvestment, which is my definition. I consider that to be justice uninvestment. But we have 35,000 people, 35,000 people in the state prisons back then. Now we have 23,000.
Yeah,
We've shut
35
down
to
2
23.
prisons,
Yeah.
and I get very frustrated by that. It's like we have 8 million people in the state. Is that right? 8 million.
6.5 or something, but whatever.
Maybe 20,000 of them are in prison.
Yeah.
23,000, and it's like, well, that doesn't seem right to me. But regardless of that, just go back to the root of it. I'm on this. The Missouri Supreme Court put me on a task force. I'm the only sheriff on there, and it's literally some of the greatest legal minds in the state of Missouri. And I get to listen to some of the most interesting debates I've ever heard, and I hold that with great honor. I really
It was an honor
Try
to
to
get
mind
appointed
my-
to the committee.
try to
Yeah,
try
it
to
was.
mind my P's
Yeah,
and Q's
right.
with those guys and girls because they're way smarter than me. But I get to listen to all the debates, and when I first got put on there, it was a sentencing disparities committee. The disparities of racial disparities in prisons, and so that was the first thing we looked at, and it morphed over 5 or 6 years. I kind of started barking about this truth in sentencing, and they finally gave me the floor, and I was kind of able to make my case, and basically just saying what the judge says needs to go. That's what needs to happen.
Mhm.
I'm not even fighting for the longer sentences yet. Well, I think sometimes that's merited. Justice is the judge decides the proper application of justice and mercy. I believe in mercy. I believe in second chances.
Sure.
I believe in justice. I believe there's one guy that we all vote for to decide that. That's called a judge. He's
Yeah.
the only person in the entire case that gets to hear all the evidence.
That's our
both sides.
Constitution. That's the Constitution.
But all he does is basically give the sentence and hopes magically DOC is going to do that. Back up, sweetheart. And actually, I take that back. Get up there. But anyway, that's not what happens. So after I kind of made my pitch, Patricia or Judge Breckenridge and Judge Brent Powell and some of they had Marshall Clement come down for the Council of State Governments, and they did a huge study on DOC and our sentencing program, and they did a deal, and it was like on the lower end, it was like you were serving 10 to 15% on most crimes. 10 to 15%. Well, I catch the bad guy. Ben prosecutes him. Judge gives him 10 years. The newspaper talks about how he's going to do 10 years, and he's out after just a little bit over a year.
Over a year.
Yeah, and so it's like it's frustrating. There's so many nuances that take place where none of us are going to know how long they're going to serve. My fight is to make sure people know how long somebody's going to serve, or at least they're going to know the minimum amount they're going to serve. Well, that resonated. And after I made my argument, the first people that joined my team up there were the defense attorneys. And I was like, well, that's an interesting ally. But he, and Dobbs stood up and he said, well, I agree with the sheriff. And everybody was kind of not expecting that. And he said, well, how am I supposed to give my clients advice if I don't know how long they're going to be in there?
That's right.
He said last week or last month or whatever time I heard him say, he said, I had a guy that was sentenced to 2 years. Well, 2 years in the state of Missouri may mean 3 months or maybe 18 months. How am I supposed to tell my client to take this deal or not? Because I don't know what the deal really is. And so the defense attorney started getting on board. Not all of them, but he was pretty good, and it just kind of won over the room. And I was really, really pleased with that. We've been working that way, and they just recently sent me an email this last week, I think it was, basically saying they've come up with a sentencing calculator. They hired a firm out of Texas to come up with a sentencing calculator, and so we're making some progress on that.
Yeah.
The idea is the judge can enter all the data and see what will actually happen.
Yeah.
Because right now you couldn't read the state statutes, put it all together and help.
The pushback to not getting the truth in sentencing cleared up in statute or whatever is that coming from the more from the urban areas? Maybe the attorneys in the urban areas, or is there certain? Obviously, it seems to me like rural Missouri would be behind you. They want to. We need to know what these people are going to be serving. But I can also see where there could be parts of the state where they want out as quick as they can get it, and they don't want to see anything change with that. I don't know. I'm just curious if a
You
reason
know,
that you can't
I
get that
don't.
done, because there's been a lot of work done on it.
Yeah, and it's moving. It's going to happen.
It's going to
And
happen.
we've had a few. You know, it seems like a lot of the people running our office now are taking this more serious. But you
serious.
got also remember when I started this fight, this was a BLM movement.
Exactly.
Right. So it was so anti-cop, and
Exactly.
everything was about treatment and getting people in out and all this stuff. And I'm just,
Thank you.
I'm
That's
just,
kind of where I was going with that, but I didn't know exactly
well,
how to say
the
it.
pendulum swings
Yeah.
back and forth, and I believe that the popularity of justice has finally started to come back a little bit, and people want
at least
justice.
in Missouri.
Yeah, in Missouri.
Yeah.
And I don't know squat about anywhere else.
Yeah.
But I pay attention to what happens here. And the movement is heading back in our direction. I think it'll happen. I know that Andrew Bailey, I spent a long time talking to him.
Good man. I know Andrew personally. He's a good man.
He's going places.
He's a good man.
But I talked to him for quite a bit at the conference.
He's our Attorney General elect on the Republican side.
And he's pushing minimum sentences. Of course, I'm a fan of minimum sentences. It's fine, but I want to make sure they stick. That way, that whatever the judge says goes. Because I want transparency or true sentencing.
And I think what people need to realize is that you guys spend so much time out here arresting these thugs. You put your lives on the line. I mean, you do so much, and then you just want to see justice served. You just want to be making sure that you're being supported by the system, right?
Well, you don't want to see, who would want to see all their labors, be wasted,
right?
And I don't mind serving, and I don't mind giving of myself. That's kind of what I want to do, but I also want to know that something good came of it.
Right.
And we're just one spoke in the wheel. There's a lot of hands in the pot, and everything I see on a local level, people are trying hard.
Yeah.
And they're really doing a good job. But then you get up the kind of the bureaucracy of DOC, and there's no one to hold accountable. You're going to call up and chew out.
That's right.
You can call me up. I do the wrong thing. Some blogs about it. Ben messes up. Whatever judge makes a bad decision. You can't go down the grocery store without hearing about it.
We're not perfect.
People show up on your front door and you hear about it.
Yeah.
DOC starts letting people out when they've only served 5% or 10% of their sentence. Ain't nobody getting in trouble there.
That's right.
There's a big difference in accountability. And when you're elected on a local level, you get to feel every bit of it.
That's exactly right.
You get the stalkers and the crazies and the haters, but you've got to do your job. And justice is so important. I don't even pretend to know how long somebody should serve. That ain't my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure that what the judge says happens.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a fight worth fighting.
Well, it's something that a lot of people don't even know is going on, and I thought it would be important to bring it up today and talk about it a little bit, so we understand that there are a lot of behind-the-scenes things going on out there that the general public may not realize. And so your work with that, and I'm very aware of, it should be commended. And you're just one person, but there's several of you in the state that are working toward that. But I do think also people should realize you've served as the president of the Missouri Sheriff Association.
Right.
You've been on the legislative board of that committee, and you've done a lot of work in your 16 years. Yeah. It's hard to believe.
Yeah, it's been a trip.
Yeah.
I love it.
What's in the future for Roye Cole?
Just one day at a time.
Yeah.
I literally, people get so mad at me. They're like, "What do you do? What do you do?" I'm like,
well,
wake up tomorrow.
You're going to be elected to your fourth term, fifth term this November, which we're all extremely proud of you for that. And Charlotte, how about you? What do you got coming up in school next week?
Well, I don't know. School starts Tuesday. I don't really know what we're doing.
8th grade?
She's going to help me direct traffic. First, and
what grade are you in?
I'm going into 5th.
5th?
Yeah.
Man, I thought she was like 7th or 8th. Yeah, growing up. What are your interests? Do you like sports, or do you like band? Or because band starts in the 5th and 6th grade, isn't it? Usually 6th. Yeah. I think we did song flutes. They call them. What do they call them now? Recorders now.
Recorders.
In the 5th grade.
We did that in music.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
squeaky.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. We should have it around the
Well,
house.
you got your new overpass opened up over there. That's a big deal in Rogersville.
Mm-hmm.
I was on it yesterday. That's been a 1 year project. So, and Diggins is getting ready to start. I understand, not too long. Boy, that'll
Really?
be important. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, with the disaster they have down there right now,
I know
it's not
it.
very pretty.
It's not very pretty, but that's not the Seymour overpass. That's the Diggins one.
Yeah, I'm
But it'll be good.
not completely in the loop on some of the MoDOT things, so I
Yeah.
can't speak to that. But I'll be glad when it's
Oh yeah.
there's no lights there.
Yeah.
I
You
mean,
guys.
we don't work traffic, but we're always helping work.
Well, you
traffic.
have to.
And
Yeah.
it's-
When there's
all
tragedies,
hands on
there's
deck.
been lots of tragedies.
There's a
over
wreck
the
on
years.
60 or I-44, especially, or a highway.
Every week, isn't there?
Oh yeah, you got to go help them because
Yeah.
troopers are understaffed
Absolutely.
too. There's one or two of them, so you got to go back up traffic for miles. Try to slow it
Absolutely.
down, keep secondary collisions from happening.
Oh yeah.
But we're blessed. We have very good law enforcement.
We do.
here. It's just a very, very good community, and I think if you stay off a lot of the internet and quit reading the blood and guts on the news, I think this is my opinion. Is the world is a lot better place than what we think it is in
It
some
is.
ways, but we're attracted to the negative attention. But I mean, for the most part, most people are pretty safe.
Mhm.
Every week's going to have some headline of somebody getting hurt or something traumatic, but there's also 42,000 people here.
That's right.
So, it's pretty close.
And there were tragedies 100 years ago and 50 years ago. I mean, you read the newspapers.
Well, your uncle sheriff, I think
Yeah.
I've been told this. I don't know how to confirm it, but we were the murder capital of the United States in 86,
1988, 1988, 87, 88. Yeah.
And
Because of 3 or 4 incidents, but I mean,
but when your population's 13,000 or 15,000 or whatever it was back then, that was a pretty big deal. And
Yeah.
I've been told that. I can't
and
confirm
then you
it,
had the
but-
Shockley family back in the 50s.
and Francis Lee Robb with the 3, and
Yeah,
Cheever
those-
would tell me about
Mm.
Booger Red and some of these guys. They're just a ton of murders, and the mom with her boy. I think she shot her boy, and just all kinds of
Baldwin.
stuff back then. And I can't remember it. I wasn't old enough. I was 6 or 7.
Yeah.
So
I know.
one of these days, I'll tell you a story that'll take the whole hour though.
Yeah. Well, I'll be available. Well, I see our producer Logan Fraker is back in the room. When Logan enters the room, then the time is about up. Believe it or not, it's 1:59.
It was a real
It's
honor.
amazing.
Thank you.
It's amazing, isn't it, how fast it goes?
Yeah.
Hey, it's an honor for me.
And you've really done so much. I mean, you just don't even know what your friendship means, and you're always doing something for this community. Just like I don't even think people know how much you're always doing, and
Well.
always trying to help, and always trying to make things better. And it's much appreciated. I mean, all of us.
It isn't
Thank you.
anywhere near what you do to sacrifice time with your family, putting your life on the line, and all of that in the job that you do. But
Well, normally
we
just
all can do
bring
our
her with
part.
me.
Yeah, we all can do our part in some small way, and I think if we did, it would be a better place. So, Charlotte, thanks for coming today.
Mhm.
Enjoyed having you, and I can tell now that you're kind of a daddy's girl.
Probably do. She rolls with me.
That's awesome.
Welcome.
Well, Sheriff,
Thank
thanks
you
again. Appreciate your
very
friendship.
much.
You bet.
Appreciate it.
You bet.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
We'll see y'all next week, hopefully.